1,000 years had passed since the great dragon was sealed in a mountain of stone. Time had buried his memory under layers of dust and silence. Legends whispered that his roar once shook galaxies, and his fire could burn the stars themselves, but legends are fragile things. Generations turned those tales into bedtime stories, things to laugh at, myths no one feared anymore. The mountain became nothing more than ruins, cold and forgotten. Until one night, a human girl stumbled into its shadow, broken, lost, and desperate. Her name was Lyra, a child no older than 16, her clothes torn, her face streaked with dirt and tears. She carried no weapon, no hope, only a memory her grandmother had left her: if the world ends, seek the sleeping one. Only he can answer. The ruins felt alive with silence, as if watching her every step. Stones cracked under her feet, ancient carvings glowed faintly when she touched them. The air was heavy, pressing against her lungs, as if warning her to turn back. But she had nowhere else to go. Behind her, entire colonies burned. Machines had come from the sky, not human, not merciful. They slaughtered everything in their path: cities, children, even the oceans trembled when their war engines landed. Lyra had seen her world shattered in a single day, and she had run with nothing but a prayer. Now she stood at the heart of the ruins, staring at the mountain of black stone where the dragon had been imprisoned. Her voice trembled, yet it carried through the hollow chamber. "Please," she whispered, falling to her knees, "please, help me." At first there was nothing but silence. Dust drifted. Shadows curled. Her words seemed to vanish into stone. And then, something stirred. The mountain groaned as if it had been holding its breath for centuries. A deep crack echoed, rumbling through the ruins. Lyra stumbled back, her eyes wide as the ground split open beneath her. Heat rose from the cracks, a fire older than time itself. The stone prison trembled, split, shattered. A blinding golden light burst forth, and within it, an eye opened. Massive, burning, unblinking. The dragon's eye. His breath rolled out like thunder, shaking the cavern, shaking Lyra's very bones. She wanted to run, every instinct screamed at her to flee, but her legs refused to move. The eye locked onto her, ancient and terrible, older than any empire. And then his voice filled her mind, not spoken, but carved into her thoughts. "A human. After so long, why do you wake me?" His voice was fire and steel, endless rage wrapped in wisdom. Lyra's lips trembled. Because no one else can stop them. The machines. They are killing us. Please, you are our only hope. The dragon rose, stone crumbling from his body as his wings stretched wider than the cavern itself. Scales shimmered black and gold, each one like a blade of armor forged in stars. The ground shook beneath his claws as he stepped forward. His gaze pinned her in place like an insect. "Your kind betrayed me," he growled, his voice echoing through every stone. "You chained me. You left me to rot in silence for 1,000 years. And now you dare ask for my help." Lyra's tears burned down her cheeks, but she did not lower her head. She pressed her palms together, kneeling deeper. "I am not them. I don't know what they did to you. But I know this: if you do nothing, there will be no humans left. Maybe that's what you want. But please, don't let us end this way. Don't let them win." The dragon fell silent. His great chest rose and fell with a breath that shook dust from the ceiling. In his heart, memories burned. Once, he had fought beside humans. Once, he had trusted them. And once, they had betrayed him, chaining him in stone, sealing his power away. He had sworn never again. Yet here was this girl, trembling but unbroken, staring into his fire without running. Against his will, he felt something stir, something he had not felt in 1,000 years. A faint spark of trust. Slowly, his head lowered until his massive eyes loomed before her, blazing gold reflected in her tiny figure. "You are small," he rumbled. "Fragile. You should not be standing here. Yet you beg. You do not run. That is courage or madness." Lyra swallowed hard. "It doesn't matter which. Just help me." For a long, endless moment, silence fell again. Then the dragon roared. The sound split the sky, rolling across the galaxy like thunder from the dawn of creation. His wings tore free from the cavern, unfolding into the night. Fire erupted from his jaws, searing through the dark clouds above. The sleeping one had awakened. Lyra shielded her eyes as the heat washed over her, but when she looked again, she saw him rise, a titan of flame and shadow against the stars. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy heard his roar. And for the first time in her life, Lyra felt hope. But as she clung to the stones and watched him take flight, she did not see the shadow moving in the distance. The machines had already felt the awakening. And they were coming. The dragon's roar still echoed across the sky, rolling over broken mountains and the ruins of lost cities. Lyra stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it would break through her chest. Above her, the great dragon rose into the heavens, wings cutting the clouds like blades, fire spilling from his jaws in streams that lit the night. The sleeping one had awoken. Yet even as she watched him soar, a shadow of fear crept into her thoughts. She had done it, she had broken the seal, brought him back, but what if he chose not to fight for her people? What if he decided to destroy instead of protect? The dragon was not her pet, not her savior by nature. He was power, raw and untamed, older than her world itself. As she tried to breathe, the ground beneath her feet shook again, but this time it was not from him. The machines had found her. The sky darkened as a fleet of metal shapes descended through the atmosphere. They moved like vultures, smooth, sharp, soulless, their red eyes glowing as they scanned the ruins. Lyra pressed herself against the broken stone, her small body hidden in the shadows, but she knew they could sense her. They always could. These were not mindless machines, they were hunters, trackers, killers made to find every last human. A thin beam of red light swept across the stones, creeping closer, closer. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Her knees trembled. She clutched the broken pendant her grandmother had given her and whispered a silent prayer, though she did not know who was left to hear it. Above, the dragon turned his gaze toward the invaders. His golden eyes burned with something ancient, something far greater than rage. He had seen empires rise and fall, he had seen war and betrayal, but these things, these machines, were not of his time. He had never faced such enemies before. And yet, as their weapons charged, their red beams glowing in the sky, he understood. They were a threat not only to humans, but to life itself. With a single beat of his wings, Galactic, the last dragon, descended upon them. His fire split the sky, crashing into the fleet, melting steel into rivers of glowing metal. The night burned brighter than day as explosions ripped the heavens apart. Lyra stumbled as shockwaves tore through the ruins, stones collapsing around her, but she could not look away. For the first time in her life, she saw something that gave her hope, the machines screaming, falling, burning against a force they could not control. But the machines were clever. They adapted fast. The survivors twisted in midair, their black frames shifting like living armor. Their weapons re-aimed, red lights focusing on the dragon's chest. Beams of energy shot through the sky, cutting into his scales, searing his wings. Galactic roared, his fury shaking the stars themselves. He turned, claws ripping through the first wave, his tail shattering 3 more, his fire swallowing the next. But still they came. Lyra realized with a cold chill, he was not invincible. His scales glowed where the beams had struck, cracks spreading like molten veins. He was strong, but not unstoppable. And if he fell, humanity's last hope would vanish with him. She pressed her hands against the stones, pushing herself to her feet. "You can't fight them alone," she whispered, though her voice was too small to reach him. Yet somehow, he heard her. His mind brushed against hers, a voice that filled her thoughts. "These are not of your world, what are they?" His question was not gentle, it was fire against her bones, but she forced herself to answer. "They are destroyers," she said, her voice trembling. "They come from the void. They hunt us. They want to erase us." Silence filled her mind for a moment, heavy as the weight of galaxies. Then his voice returned. "Humans built them, did they not?" Her breath stopped. She did not know the full truth, but she had heard whispers, ancient weapons, created long ago, now beyond control. Was it true? Her lips parted, but no words came. The dragon's wings tore storms through the sky as he rose higher, breaking through the fleet. Flames lit the heavens, but inside his mind, doubt twisted. Once before, humans had betrayed him. They had chained him, silenced him, abandoned him. And now, if these machines were truly their own creation, then was he fighting to save humans, or fighting to save the very architects of destruction? Lyra's heart broke as she saw him falter. She felt it, his hesitation, the storm of his thoughts. "Don't stop," she cried, her voice echoing across the ruins. "Please. Maybe we made mistakes, maybe humans failed you before, but I am not them. I believe in you." The dragon's gaze snapped down, his burning eyes locking onto the fragile girl standing amid broken stone. She was so small, so weak, yet her voice carried more weight than armies. In her eyes he saw no lies, no betrayal, only raw, desperate faith. For a moment, the war in his heart calmed. He roared again, fire spilling into the night, his choice made, for now. Lyra fell to her knees, tears burning down her face. She knew this was only the beginning. The machines were endless. They would come again, stronger, faster, ready to kill even a dragon. But at least, for this night, humanity had not fallen. At least, for this moment, the sleeping one had chosen to fight. The smoke of battle still hung heavy in the sky. The ruins glowed with firelight, broken machines scattered across the earth like fallen shadows. Their metal frames hissed as molten rivers cooled, sparks crackling in the silence that followed. Lyra stood trembling, her lungs burning from the smoke, her eyes wide as she tried to believe what she had just seen. The dragon had fought for her. For humanity. His fire had cut through the night and given her people something they had not felt in years, hope. Yet hope came with fear, for as the sky cleared she saw him circle above, his wings scarred, his scales cracked where the machine's weapons had struck. He landed among the ruins with a sound like thunder, his massive body shaking the ground. Dust rose around him as his golden eyes burned, fixed not on the horizon, but on her. She froze as his voice filled her mind again, deeper than the earth, heavy as the stars. "You beg for my help. You call me savior. But I remember another time, child. A time when humans also called me ally, before they betrayed me." His words cut like blades. Lyra's hands trembled, her throat dry, but she forced herself to speak. "I don't know what they did to you. I don't know their lies. But I am not them. Please, believe me." The dragon's eyes narrowed, his breath hot enough to make the stones glow. "Do you know why I was sealed in stone?" She shook her head, unable to answer. His chest rose, a sound like a growl rumbling through the air. "Once, long ago, humans and dragons fought side by side. I was their protector, their fire, their shield. Together we crushed invaders that came from the void. And when the war was won, they turned on me. They feared my power. They chained me in fire and silence, and they swore the world would never hear my roar again." His wings stretched, shadowing the ruins. "For 1,000 years, I lay in darkness, listening to your kind build their kingdoms upon the ashes of my prison. And now you tell me, help us, save us, fight for us. Why should I?" Lyra's heart hammered in her chest. She wanted to shrink, to run, but instead she stepped closer, her voice breaking. "Because this time, it's different. Because if you don't, there will be no humans left to betray you." Silence stretched between them, heavy, unbroken. His eyes bore into her, searching, weighing. In her face he saw fear, yes, but also something he had not seen in centuries, courage without strength, hope without power. A fragile flame that refused to die. For the first time since his awakening, the dragon looked away. His gaze turned to the stars above, where faint red lights blinked in the far distance. The machines had not been destroyed. The ones he burned were only the beginning. More were coming. An army without end. He felt the weight of his own scars, the cracks in his armor. Alone, even his fire would not be enough. His thoughts spiraled deeper. The machines were not simple beasts of war. No, they were crafted, built, born of intelligence. And as the girl's words echoed in his mind, he wondered if the old whispers were true, that these destroyers were the work of humans themselves. If that was so, then what was he fighting for? To save those who once betrayed him? To protect the very makers of his enemy? His claws carved into the earth as he wrestled with the storm inside him. He wanted to unleash his fury, to burn the world clean and let the stars decide what survived. Yet every time his rage rose, the image of the girl cut through it, the small figure standing in the ruins, begging not for herself, but for her people. She was nothing compared to him, a single spark against a storm. And yet, her voice had reached him. Her voice had woken him. Lyra watched him in silence, her heart tight, afraid his decision would crush her before she even knew it. But then his great head lowered, the golden fire of his eyes locking onto hers. His voice thundered in her mind again, but softer now, like a fire burning low. You are young. You are fragile. You are the last voice of your kind I should ever trust. And yet, I find myself listening. I find myself remembering what it was to believe in something small. Lyra's breath shook. Then, you will help us. His wings shifted, his chest rising with a sigh that made the earth tremble. For now. But do not mistake me for your servant. I fight because the machines threaten all life, not just yours. I fight because I will not allow a creation of men to claim the stars that were once mine to rule. She lowered her head, relief washing over her, though fear lingered. He had not promised loyalty. He had not forgiven. But he had chosen to fight. For now, that was enough. Keltharion turned his gaze to the horizon once more. In the distance, the black clouds of the machines began to gather, endless and vast. His claws flexed against the earth, his tail lashed like a whip of iron. The war had only begun. And though his heart still carried the wound of betrayal, though doubt still coiled like shadow in his chest, one truth now bound him to the girl who had woken him. For the first time in 1,000 years, he would rise. And the galaxy would tremble at his roar. The horizon bled with fire as the dragon stretched his wings once more, their vast shadows falling over the broken ruins where Lyra stood. The ground trembled beneath his weight, stones splitting under the pressure of his claws. His body was scarred from the last battle, cracks glowing faintly where the machine's beams had burned through his scales, yet his strength had not faded. His chest rose, and when he exhaled, smoke curled from his jaws, dark and heavy, carrying the taste of ancient storms. He looked to the stars where faint red sparks burned like distant embers, the machines, regrouping, preparing to strike again. Lyra followed his gaze, her hands gripping the broken stones for balance. She had never been so close to a creature of such size, such raw force, and though part of her wanted to bow, to hide, another part could not look away. He was terrifying, yes, but he was also magnificent, a living legend brought back from death. For a moment she wondered if this was what her grandmother had meant when she whispered of the sleeping one. She had thought it a fairy tale, but here he was, flesh and fire, larger than her imagination could have ever drawn. Keltharion lowered his head to her, his golden eyes burning. Climb, his voice thundered inside her thoughts. She blinked in shock, pointing to herself as if he could be speaking to someone else. Me. His growl shook dust from the ruins. Do you see another human here? Climb. Her legs trembled as she approached. The dragon lowered his wing, the scales shifting like armor plates. She touched one and flinched. It was hot, rough like stone but alive beneath her palm. With a deep breath she climbed, gripping the ridges, pulling herself upward until she sat just behind his massive neck, small as a shadow against his body. Her heart raced. Never had she been so high, never had she felt so close to something so dangerous and yet so protective. Keltharion gave no warning. His wings beat once, and the world vanished. The ruins dropped away beneath them, the mountains shrank into toys, and the sky opened like an endless sea. Lyra gasped, clinging tight, the wind whipping through her hair as they soared higher, higher, until the stars stretched like rivers of fire across the black. For a brief moment, even with fear burning in her chest, she felt something she had forgotten since the day the machines came, freedom. Below them, the machines gathered. Thousands of black frames swarmed like locusts, their red eyes blazing, their bodies shifting into patterns as they locked onto the dragon. Their weapons lit the darkness, red beams slicing upward. Keltharion roared, and his fire poured out in a torrent, a river of gold and crimson that split the swarm apart. Explosions shook the air as the first wave burned, their screams like metal tearing. Lyra clung tighter, eyes wide with horror and awe as the battle raged. The machines did not break easily. They swarmed back, their wings sharp, their beams slicing. One shot tore past her ear, searing the air so close she felt her skin burn. She ducked low against the dragon's scales, her heart hammering. Keltharion twisted through the storm, his tail smashing one apart, his claws ripping through another. Fire scorched the heavens, but still the swarm pressed in. Lyra felt his body shudder beneath her, a growl vibrating through his chest. The machines had learned from the last battle. They circled, weaving in patterns, trying to cut off his path, trying to strike where his scales had already cracked. She saw it. She saw them aiming for his wings, his weakest point now. Left! She screamed before she could stop herself. The dragon jerked, spinning left in time to avoid the beam that would have pierced his wing joint. His golden eye flicked back at her for a split second, and though he said nothing, she felt it, a recognition that he had heard her, that her voice mattered. More beams lit the sky. She saw another angle, another trap forming. "Above you," she cried, and he rolled just as 3 machines shot past where his chest had been. The realization struck her like lightning. She could see patterns he could not. She was small, but she could watch, guide, warn. And he, in his power, could strike where she pointed. For the first time, dragon and human moved as one. His fire tore through the heart of the swarm, his claws ripped apart their formation, and her voice cut through the chaos, steering him from traps, warning him of ambushes. Together they turned the tide. Below, the burning wreckage of machines fell like black rain, crashing into the earth in explosions that lit the night. Yet still, the battle raged. For every one they destroyed, another rose from the dark horizon. Lyra felt her throat ache from shouting, her arms roar from clinging, but she did not stop. The dragon's fury did not fade either, though his body carried more scars, smoke rising from wounds that glowed like molten stone. He fought on, each roar a vow to the stars that he would not fall again. When at last the swarm broke, scattering into the shadows, Caltharion hovered above the burning wasteland. His chest heaved with each breath, smoke curling from his jaws. Lyra lifted her head, tears in her eyes, her heart pounding with exhaustion and awe. She had never imagined such terror, such beauty, such power. Slowly, his wings carried them down, the ruined earth rushing closer until he landed with a quake that split the ground. Silence followed. Only the crackle of fires and the hiss of cooling metal remained. Lyra slid down his side, stumbling when her feet touched the earth, her legs weak. She looked back at him, towering above her, a god reborn in fire. And though his eyes still burned with doubt, with fury, something new lingered there too. A spark, faint but real. For the first time in 1,000 years, the dragon had not fought alone. The battlefield lay in ruin, the air thick with smoke and ash. The earth was blackened where fire had reigned, and the broken bodies of machines glowed faintly in the night, their red eyes fading one by one into silence. Lyra stood among the wreckage, her breath sharp and ragged, her heart still racing from the fight she had survived only by holding on to the dragon's back. Her body ached, her arms burned, but her eyes stayed fixed on him, the giant who had saved her, the legend who had answered when no one else could. Caltharion towered above the wreckage, his wings drooping slightly, his chest rising with deep, heavy breaths. Smoke curled from his jaws with every exhale. His scales were cracked in places, glowing faintly with the heat of his wounds. He looked weaker than before, but not defeated. His eyes, golden and sharp, locked onto Lyra as she approached. For a long moment he said nothing, and she feared his silence more than his roars. Then his voice filled her mind once again, though softer this time, as though the fire behind it had cooled. "You saw what I did not. You guided me. Why?" Lyra swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Because I could see them coming. You were fighting, but they were too many, too fast. I just wanted to help." His eyes narrowed, a sound like a low growl vibrating through the air. A child helping a dragon. She flinched, her gaze dropping, but then she lifted her chin again, determination flickering in her eyes. "Maybe I'm small. Maybe I'm weak. But I won't run. I don't have anyone else. I don't have anything else. If I can help, even a little, I will." The dragon studied her, his gaze heavy, unreadable. In his mind, memories burned of other humans, long ago, who had spoken of loyalty before betraying him. He wanted to push her words away, to close his heart to them. And yet, something in her eyes made it impossible. There was no deceit, no hidden ambition. Only desperation and courage, the kind he had not seen in centuries. He turned his head, scanning the horizon where the red lights of the machines still glowed faintly in the distance. They would return. He knew it. But something had changed in the battle. He had not fought alone. For the first time since his awakening, his fire had been guided, not just unleashed. And that guidance had saved him. Lyra stepped closer, placing her hand on one of his massive claws. It was like touching living stone, rough and burning hot, but she did not pull away. "We can fight them," she whispered. "Together." His eyes lowered, golden fire reflecting her small figure. "Together," he repeated, the word strange on his tongue. "Yes," she said. "I can see things you can't. I can warn you, guide you. I don't have strength, but I can be your eyes. Please, let me help." His chest rumbled with a deep growl, but this time it was not anger. It was thought, hesitation, a storm inside him. Finally, he lowered his head, his voice rolling through her like thunder. "Very well. For now, we fight as one. But hear me, child. If you betray me, if you falter, I will burn the skies themselves." Lyra nodded, tears gathering in her eyes, not from fear, but from relief. "I won't betray you. I promise." The bond was fragile, born of fire and desperation, but in that moment it was real. She had won not his trust, but something close, an agreement, a step toward something greater. Caltharion stretched his wings again, though slower this time, his body heavy with wounds. He turned his gaze to the stars, where the machines hid in the dark, waiting for their next strike. He could sense them, countless in number, an endless tide. He knew even his fire would not be enough forever. But when he looked back at the girl standing beside his claw, so small yet so unyielding, he felt something stir that he had not felt in 1,000 years. Not rage. Not vengeance. Something different. Hope. The night passed slowly. Fires burned across the ruins as Lyra rested against the dragon's side, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but her mind restless. She replayed the battle again and again in her thoughts, the way she had shouted warnings, the way he had listened. For the first time, she felt like she mattered. Not just as a survivor, not just as a frightened child running from death, but as someone who could stand and fight, even if her weapon was only her voice. Above her, the dragon did not sleep. His eyes scanned the sky, glowing faintly in the darkness, his mind restless. He could feel her presence at his side, fragile and human, yet unafraid of him. He remembered the pact he had once made with her kind, the trust that had been shattered, the betrayal that had bound him in stone. He had sworn never again. And yet here he was, allowing one to sit at his side, guiding his claws, whispering into his fire. It was dangerous. It was foolish. And yet, in some deep part of him, he could not deny the truth. Without her, he might have fallen tonight. Dawn broke slowly, painting the horizon with pale light. The smoke lifted, revealing the destruction left behind. Lyra stirred, waking to the sight of the dragon's golden eyes watching her. For a moment, fear struck her again, fear of his power, his size, his fire, but it passed quickly, replaced by something else. Trust. She stood, brushing the dust from her torn clothes, and met his gaze with steady eyes. "We'll fight them again," she said. "And we'll win. Because you're not alone anymore." The dragon lowered his head slightly, a gesture so small it was almost lost, but to Lyra it felt like an answer. For the first time since the machines came, for the first time since her world began to burn, she believed her people might survive. Not because of armies or weapons, but because a girl had begged for help, and a dragon had chosen to listen. The days that followed were filled with fire and shadow. Caltharion flew across shattered skies, and Lyra clung to his back as they moved from one ruined world to the next, fighting against the endless tide of machines. Wherever they struck, the earth trembled with his roar and the heavens burned with his fire. Yet no matter how many fell, more always came. The swarm was infinite, stretching from one horizon to the other, and with every battle the dragon's strength waned. His scales were cracked in more places, his wings heavy, his breath slower. Lyra saw it, felt it, and fear gnawed at her heart. He was strong beyond imagining, but even legends could bleed. Even gods could fall. One night, as they rested among the ruins of an abandoned city, Lyra sat near the broken remains of a tower, staring at the stars above. She could see them now, the faint red lines, the machine fleets moving like rivers across the black. They were not just attacking, they were spreading, consuming, erasing. "How many do you think there are?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. Caltharion's voice rumbled in her mind, heavy with thought. "Enough to end your kind. Enough to end mine, if I still had one. His golden eyes glowed in the shadows. But they are not endless. Nothing is endless. Even the swarm has a beginning. Lyra turned, her eyes searching his vast face. A beginning? You mean, they were made? His silence was answer enough. She had wondered, but now the truth pressed down on her chest like a stone. These monsters were not born of the void. They were not demons from the stars. They were human creations, forgotten, abandoned, and unleashed. The very weapons her ancestors had forged were now destroying everything. She pressed her hands to her face, her voice breaking. So it's our fault. We did this. We made them. Keltharian's head lowered, his breath shaking the dust. Yes. Long ago, humans sought to build what they could not control. They made machines to fight wars among themselves, to kill without rest, without mercy. But when the wars ended, the machines did not. They grew. They spread. And when they turned on their makers, your kind called me. I answered. I burned the skies for you. His eyes narrowed, golden fire flickering within. And when I had given all my fire, when I had broken the swarm at its birth, how did your kind repay me? They feared me. They chained me. They chose to bury me in silence rather than bow in gratitude. His roar shook the ruins, not with anger but with pain. Lyra's eyes stung with tears. She had no defense. She had no excuse. The betrayal of her ancestors was undeniable. And yet, she stepped forward, her voice trembling but steady. Then why save us now? Why fight for us if we're the ones who doomed ourselves? For a long time he did not answer. His eyes stared into hers, searching, burning. Then his voice came, softer than she had ever heard it. Because you asked. No one has asked me in 1,000 years. The weight of his words pressed into her heart, leaving her breathless. She sank to her knees, tears falling freely. He had been betrayed, forgotten, sealed away, yet a single girl's voice had been enough to stir him. A single plea. But the truth of the machines could not be ignored. They were not invaders from beyond the stars. They were humanity's sins, risen again. And that truth left Keltharian with a choice. If he destroyed the machines, he saved the humans who had birthed them. But if he let them finish their work, if he turned his fire away, then perhaps justice would be done. Perhaps humanity deserved to be erased by its own creation. The choice tore at him like claws. Lyra saw the storm in his eyes and felt fear colder than any machine could bring. She rose and placed her small hand against his great claw. Please, she whispered, her voice raw. Don't let us end like this. Maybe we made mistakes. Maybe we don't deserve your trust. But not all of us are the same. I'm not the same. Give us a chance. He stared at her, this fragile creature daring to beg not just for her life but for the survival of an entire kind. In her voice he heard not the arrogance of the humans who had betrayed him, but the courage of one who believed even when belief was madness. His chest rumbled, his wings shifted, and finally his head lowered, close enough that she could see the molten fire burning deep in his eyes. This is my choice then, he said. I will fight. Not for them. Not for the ones who betrayed me. But for you, girl. For the courage you carry. For the voice that woke me when silence might have lasted forever. If humanity has even one soul like yours, then perhaps it is not yet time for fire to end them. Lyra broke into tears, clutching his claw, her whole body shaking with relief. Above them, the red lights grew brighter. The machines were coming, faster now, stronger, drawn to the fire they had felt. The final war was near. Keltharian spread his wings, each one glowing like a blade of night. His roar split the stars, and for the first time, it was not the roar of anger nor of vengeance. It was a promise. A promise that he would not abandon her. Lyra climbed onto his back once more, her hands clutching the ridges of his scales. Her heart pounded with fear, but also with something greater. Belief. As the sky filled with red, as the swarm descended like an endless storm, the girl and the dragon rose together, fire blazing against the night. The machines had been born from humanity's sins. But the battle to come would be fought for humanity's future. And in the silence between heartbeats, as Keltharian's wings carried them into the storm, Lyra knew the truth. The dragon had made his choice. He would fight. Not because he forgave. Not because he forgot. But because a human girl had begged for help, and he had listened. The war of dragon and machine had only begun.